are, Jack, is that we have these private prisons that have now hired lobbyists to go get minimum mandatories. And
in the spring of 2002, 5 current and former ranking police officers got together to talk about the war on drugs and its impact on their fellow officers. Over the next 3 years, this group of 5 swelled to 500, as current and former DEA agents, police chiefs, judges, and prosecutors joined their ranks. Now they've gone public, and what they're saying is shaking the drug war establishment to its roots.
I think one of the things that I need to confront with respect to my own behavior is that even though for many years I have believed that this drug war is not just nonsense but harmful financially and psychically and spiritually, it's just an immoral proposition. I should have been saying much more of that much more strenuously.
When I joined New Jersey State Police in 1964, we had 1,700 troopers. We had a 7-man narcotic unit. Always seemed perfectly adequate for the job we needed to do. And then overnight, as a result of these bills of Mr. Nixon's, we went from a 7-man unit to a 76-person narcotic bureau. Well, what they decided to do was they took undercover people like myself, and they targeted us against small friendship groups of young people in college, like yourselves. And as soon as we got in there and became their friends, come a Friday night, somebody would say, hey, school's out, we're off work, anyone want to get high? And of course, if nobody said that, that was our job. If somebody simply passed a marijuana cigarette to me, they became a drug dealer. That hand-held marijuana cigarette would send that person to jail for 7 years. Over 1,000 young people went to jail as a direct result of what I did out there as one undercover agent, something that I'm certainly not proud of today.
When I was a police officer in 1966, I used to enjoy kicking in doors and going after, a half a baggie of marijuana or a seed, even for that matter. It was a felony. We were told in the academy that that was a big pinch. It was really important to collect those numbers, and I did it. I did it with zeal. I did it with a lot of vigor. But after about 14 months on the job, having had a principal prosecutor slap me upside the head and question my understanding of the Constitution, I began to understand that the 17 or the 19-year-old kid I had in the backseat of my police car was not a criminal at all.
I'm a retired police captain. I spent 20 years in law enforcement working for the town of Tonawanda Police Department. Now, the only way this war on drugs is going to be won is if we make drugs go away. We got to win the war. The enemy's got to be gone. We're making a war on drugs. Drugs are the enemy. We got to make them go away. Show of hands. How many people in this room believe we can do anything to make drugs go away? No more heroin, no more crack cocaine, no more marijuana. Drugs are gone. Let's move on to the next problem. Okay, so we can't make these drugs go away, so this war on drugs really isn't a good title. Makes us feel good. We're going to win the war. But it really doesn't describe the policy. I got another word that describes the policy perfectly. Prohibition. How many people got a picture of a big black car, Chicago, Al Capone, and the tops of some machine gun in it? Anybody? How many other thought when you hear that word, that doesn't work? Isn't that what we learned in this country between 1920 and 1933? Prohibition doesn't work. That's why we ended it. Well, that is a description of the policy that we live under today in America when it comes to drugs.
Under Prohibition, we have given the right to the criminal of who's going to supply the drugs to the United States, what kind of drugs are going to be supplied, how much those drugs are going to cost, how they're going to be produced, how potent they're going to be, what age levels they're going to sell to, and where they're going to sell. And if they decide they're going to sell to 10-year-old kids on our playgrounds, by God, that's where they'll be sold.
The thing that gets me is we don't learn a thing from history. We want our institutions to be pure and not corrupt, but yet we do the things that we know is going to corrupt them.
And the way I like to tell the story is now you came into this thing a bright-eyed, shiny young recruit, you're a police officer 4 or 5 years, you've seen the wasted energy that you spent on this drug war, and now you're standing in a motel room where the drug arrest had just been made, laying on the bed is $100 and some thousand, hasn't been counted yet in cash. In your back pocket is a $3,800 bill from the plumber that you didn't know how you were going to pay, and it doesn't make any difference anyways. And you take your first taste, and then you're gone.
After I retired from New Jersey State Police, I helped co-found this group called L.E.A.P, or Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It's a group that was created to give voice to all the current and former members of law enforcement who feel the war on drugs is not only a dismal failure, but it's a terribly destructive policy.
I remember just going in, taking a small area of my community and for all practical purposes, cordoning it off, completely cleaning it up, using some pretty sophisticated techniques, trampling all over the edges of the Constitution to do so. But I mean, really cleaning it up and getting all of the dope dealers out of there. And to my dismay, 90 days later, I had a Haitian group to move in from downstate. I had the Miami boys to move in from Jacksonville, and they were shooting machine guns and beating people mercilessly, and I wanted my old dope dealers back.
We didn't have an illegal drug in this country until 1914, when we passed the Harrison Anti-Drug Act. Just before 1914, the government said, we have 1.3% of the people in this country addicted to drugs. God, we can't have that, right? So they passed this law. Now you fast forward 56 years to 1970, the beginning of the war on drugs. In 1970, the government said 1.3% of the population is addicted to drugs. Can't have it. Got to start a war on drugs. 36 years later, and $1 trillion and all these lives lost, 1.3% of the population is addicted to drugs.